Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you for joining today's webinar hosted by the Sikh Research Institute. My name is Manvinder Kaur. Today's class is a part of the live series, Love and Justice through Guru Nanak Sahib. This class will begin with a 40-minute lecture, followed by 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A. So please drop your questions in the chat box and be sure to include your name and city. Now, I would like to introduce you to our instructor, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with already. Asha Marie Kaur is a research assistant with Sikri. She has a BA in political science and international studies from Northwestern University. Her work at Sikri is tied to her love of the Persian language and the way it connects Iran, Afghanistan, Central Asia, and the Indian subcontinent. Please welcome Asha.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to session 6 of Love and Justice through Guru Nanak Sahib. This is the 50% mark, everyone. We're halfway through the 12 sessions. So I just want to thank everyone for being here, for listening, for coming all this way. And I hope we can be together through this till the end. So today we're halfway through the course, we are actually starting at the beginning in some ways. So that's really exciting. We're going to be discussing Mul Mantra, or the root verse of the Guru Granth Sahib, of Gurbani, the nucleus of the Sikh worldview. So I want to start by showing this beautiful painting by Arpana Kaur. It is one of the paintings that Sikri exhibited at the National Museum in New Delhi, and it is of Guru Nanak Sahib's encounter with Ikonkar and his emergence from the river where he realized the principle of Ikonkar. So I always like to have some images that can kind of give us a feel for what we're talking about, and I find this painting really beautiful. So moving into the text that we presented this painting with, and this story, this narrative, the Saki, was also discussed in the readings for today. This is how we presented it. And I want to discuss some particular elements of how we showcase this encounter. So Guru Nanak came to the bank of the river Bain and entered the river. Immersed in the river and the divine, words flowed, truth emerged. The divine is within all. It is up to us to let it flow like the currents of the river, and so the journey begins. So this is this Saki picked up where others left off. So by this time, Guru Nanak had a small group of disciples, Hindu and Muslim, led by his close companion Bhai Mardana. Together they sang Shabad, divine words, the sounds of traditional instruments. Each morning, the Guru would begin the day by bathing in the river. But one day, the Guru did not return, sparking panic throughout the village. A search party was organized. However, Bibi Nanki knew her brother was safe. Bibi Nanki was right. The Guru was safe, immersed in water, immersed in love. In a moment of total connection, the word Ikonkar, oneness, emerged. All illusion of separation between the creator and creation vanished. The only existence is oneness and its infinite manifestations. From this moment forward, the Guru would wear a simple robe of no gender, class, or occupational distinction and usher oneness to the world. So the way we present this narrative, and this connects to what we discussed in the Janam Saki session, we're not trying to bring in anything that we can't know for sure or supernatural elements. And we also want to stay true to the realization of Ikonkar in the telling of this encounter. Now, what do I mean by that? So we have discussed in this course that in the paradigm, the Sikh paradigm, in the paradigm of Ikonkar, there is no separation between creator and creation, and the creator doesn't take any form. It does not have this person-like form. Therefore, when this narrative is told to kind of take on the contours of a different notion of creator, one that oftentimes stems from Abrahamic faiths, it kind of distorts the meaning of Ikonkar itself. If the creator is truly formless and there's truly no separation between creator and creation, then this Saki can't be told as Guru Nanak Sahib submerging himself in water and God whispering in his ear, for example. And I think the way Nikki Guninder Kaur describes this encounter has a lot of power for me. And the reason why I like the way she writes about this narrative is that she talks about how it was something true and something that was realized, something that flowed in. So it's not something that had to be communicated and learned. It was something that was realized. And I think a way to imagine this is when water enters a vessel, and this is a metaphor that is prominent throughout Gurbani, it rushes in. The vessel does not have a choice. It can't choose to push the water out. And that's the nature of truth, and that's the nature of the realization of Ikonkar. So that's why I really want to start by telling this story in a way that reflects Ikonkar. And that shows us how, when we connect everything back to Ikonkar, if we align everything back to the Ikonkar paradigm, it really helps keep us grounded and centered and provides a very powerful anchor for us. So the Mul Mantra. What is the Mul Mantra? In its most basic form, it is the opening verse of the Guru Granth Sahib. Mantra is a word that has kind of moved into the Western lexicon as well. And in the Mul Mantra, the qualities of Ikonkar are described. So the first proclamation is Ik-Onkar. Ik, one. Onkar, being. One being is the most literal translation. And by virtue of there being only one being, there is no other. There is no other, there is only oneness. That's it's a self-evident structure, and it is the only structure. So everything else that we perceive is, in fact, just a manifestation, a part of Ik-Onkar. For something to fit into the Sikh paradigm, it has to fit into the proclamation of Ik-Onkar. So this is where we start. Oneness, there's many ways. Translation is an art. It is not an exact science. So there are many ways to translate Ik-Onkar. Throughout this course, you've seen us say oneness a lot. But in this case, we can also say one force, one being. These are all, again, the way we can determine if a translation makes sense is, does it fit within this paradigm that we're describing here? So Ik-Onkar, then what follows is the qualities of Ik-Onkar. So we begin with Sat Nam. This seems like a very short and simple utterance, but there's actually a lot of depth that we can go into here. Nam, which comes from the Indo-European root for the English word name, is a principle that is integral to Gurbani and the Sikh paradigm. Oftentimes, this gets translated simply as name, and then it becomes translated as the name of the Lord. We've already discussed why Lord is an extremely limiting way of perceiving the creator and not one that fits very well in the Sikh paradigm. And therefore, name of the Lord, something not quite fitting there either. It is true that Nam means name. That's true in the usage of language back then. It's true for the usage of the South Asian languages today. But what is a name? That helps us understand what the principle of Nam is. What is a name? A name is a signifier. We all have names as a way of orienting our interactions in this world. We give people names so that way we can direct our attention to that person, or we can direct people's attention to ourselves. So if I want to direct attention to my friend, I'd say, hey guys, listen to so-and-so. So when we're talking about the Nam of the creator, of Ikonkar, of the one force, of the ultimate being, we're talking about a signifier that reminds us to orient ourselves in that direction. So Nam is not just a name, it is an entire orientation by which one can live every action, every thought, every cultivating effort. Nam is the act of remembrance. When you call upon the Nam, you are taking an intentional action of remembering Ikonkar. And there's lots of ways to orient ourselves. It's a very distracting world. There's millions of signifiers, of labels, of things we can get caught up in. But Nam is the ultimate orientation. If we can have that orientation, we can have this very all-encompassing viewpoint, and it guides us in the direction of creator-like qualities, of the qualities of the Mul Mantra. Let's move to the other half, Sat. Sat means true or truth, which is similar to the word Sach, which comes up quite a bit in Gurbani as well. But let's talk about what it means for something to be true in a Sikh paradigm. Because you'll see in some of the transcreations, which is the Sikh term for translation, which takes into account that we are always creating as we translate. Nothing is objective. No one is objective. In our transcreations, you'll oftentimes see these words that can mean true also being interpreted as eternal. So in the Sikh paradigm, that which is true is that which is eternal. So qualities of Ikonkar, creator-like qualities, these are eternal, forever lasting qualities. And these are qualities that allow us to be vast, which we'll get into as well. That which is false is illusory, it's fleeting, it tricks you because you think that that's what reality means, or you think that's what reality looks like, but it's all a magic show. It's a game. A lot of life is illusory. Life is fleeting. So for something to be true, it has to be that which exists beyond the bounds of our human limitations. So here we have Sat Nam. You'll notice that I've put the endings to these words in parentheses. That's because I want people to know the terms on their own, and these are very important grammatical endings, and it's important that we preserve the careful grammatical structures of Gurbani in our transcriptions as well. But I've just put them in parentheses so that we can know what the terms are as they stand alone as well. Karta Purak. So Karta means creator. There is long-standing linguistic commonalities that tie the word creator and Karta together. Karta Purak, pervasive, all-encompassing, boundless. So this creator is pervasive, can't be kept up in one form, in one representation. This creator cannot be restricted to a certain group of people. Access is everywhere. Nirbhau. without fear, fearless. What does it mean to be fearless? Why do we have fear? We have fear because of a very particular element that makes us human, which is we have an intense issue with separation. We believe oftentimes in this idea that we are truly separate, that our survival is wrapped up in the survival of ourself. We have an ego that tells us this every day, that we're wrestling with every day. And when we think, okay, I have to survive, and it's my survival against other people's, or the survival of my family, or the survival of my clan, of my nation against others, one becomes fearful that there's not enough for everyone, that not everyone can have resources, for example. And so we start to act in this fear-based, ego-based way because we feel that we have to get ahead, right? But Ikonkar is a self-evident being, lives in total oneness. There is nothing outside of the realm of Ikonkar. So Ikonkar doesn't have to be worrying that, oh man, if I don't keep things for myself, something bad's going to happen to me. I'm going to get destroyed. And so this is a fearless existence. It is the ultimate serenity, peace, calm, sturdiness, acceptance. So fearlessness is not, it is about being brave and standing up against injustice. But the root of fear is there's something deeper to it that's not always talked about in our society. Because to talk about that root of fear would have to lead to a lot of adjustments as to how we live and relate to each other. So followed by nirver, without enmity. If there is no other, there is no one to be an enemy of. And if we are all a manifestation, a part of the same being, what does it mean to have an enemy within our own? What would it mean if my thumb decided it was my pinky's enemy? It wouldn't really make sense. It would be an impossible battle. And we know what happens when a body fights against itself. We have horrible diseases like cancer that show us this. But Ikonkar doesn't suffer from these issues, from these diseases, and from these emotional battles and struggles. Ikonkar, there is no other. There's only one being, and that being is without enmity. Akal Murat, timeless being. Akal meaning timeless. Earlier we saw Karta Apuruk. Akal Puruk is also a word used in the Sikh lexicon as a term for the creator, as a term for Ikonkar. So the timeless and the pervasive. Ajuni Sabang, self-illumined. So nothing has to bring Ikonkar into existence. Everything else has to be brought into existence. We are born, animals are born, plants grow out of the earth, we have life cycles, we are brought up and raised. But Ikonkar is self-illumined, self-evident, is not in any cycle, for it is the ultimate being. It dictates the cycle. The cycles happen within it, but there's no cycle that is imposed upon Ikonkar. Gur Prasad, realized by perfection's grace. So we want to think again about what Guru means. That Guru is perfection. Guru is a transmission of wisdom, of knowledge. And grace is another English transcreative term that's going to come up a lot in this course, in our readings. The grace of Ikonkar is always available. Anyone can access it, but that doesn't mean we will naturally know that, because it takes intentional action to feel that grace. So I could listen to my ego, and I could think everyone's out to get me, that the world is miserable, and I have to be just as miserable to get ahead. Or I can tune into grace and orient myself around wisdom. I can be in this Guru Prasad mindset. And this isn't to say that, oh, if you're suffering, you just have to smile and put on a happy attitude. It's nothing about grace is there to say that life will be easy. In fact, the Gurus describe the world as an ocean of fire that we're all desperately trying to get across without drowning by being kicked out of the boat. Okay, I mean, life is not easy. And we're not trying to dismiss people's pain here. But there is a way I can act, there is a way I can deal constructively, and there is a way to accept difficulty with grace. We'll talk more about that later in this session as well. But it's always there. It's always there. It is something that takes time, chiseling, effort, and orientation to feel and to be motivated by. Oh, and also it's a very nice comment. Being here with you is a perfect example of Guru Prasad grace. Thank you. Okay, so I'm actually going to go back and we're going to repeat the Mul Mantra. Then we're going to talk about what does the Mul Mantra mean for us. We know what it means about Ikonkar, but what does it mean about us? Ikonkar. Satnam. Karta Purakh. Nirbhav. Nirvair. Akal Murat. Ajuni Sabang. Guru Prasad. Okay, so our goal is to be in the path of Ikonkar, to chisel out a being, a way of life that is that of Ikonkar. So what is our call to action? To evolve like the One. And this is an interpretation that I helped write. You may have your own. Maybe this could be an awesome exercise, a fun journaling exercise before bed or something. What are the ways you will emulate the qualities of Mul Mantra? Evolve like the One. Recognize the eternal principles. Cultivate creative action. Display fearless behavior. View no enemy. Perform timeless actions. Rise above consequences. Cultivate the original self. Perceive the grace. Let's give some examples. What could this look like? Evolve like the One. Always be on this path of evolving. How do we grow? How do we develop? Because we're not naturally like the One. That's what makes us human. We're actually pretty bad at teaching each other. Like on average in society, we're not teaching each other how to evolve like the One. Recognize the eternal principles. So society has a lot of principles to offer. Not all of them are eternal. Society might tell us only worry about collecting wealth. Wealth is fundamentally fleeting. It's definitely fleeting in that you're not going to have your wealth when you die. But we've seen in our own world, one can have a lot of money in the bank and a financial crisis can hit and that disappears in a second. So principles crafted around money aren't really that eternal. But one may work and enjoy their work because it allows them to cultivate creative action. Every time you create, and you're in that act of creating, you are emulating encompassing. Every time you write something, make a meal for people you love, paint something, build something, have a conversation that generates new ideas, these are all creative actions, and these are the most divine actions you can take. And I really hope if anyone here is an artist that you know this and you carry this with you, because I think that the act of art making is really sadly devalued by our society that doesn't recognize eternal principles. Display fearless behavior. Stand up for oneness even when the consequences are great. Rise above those consequences. Don't think about the immediate consequences. Think about the long-standing vision. View no enemy. There is no room for oppression, discrimination, prejudice, and encompassing. Now, there are lots of supporting ways to flesh out very thorough and complex Sikh viewpoints. They all have to connect back to the nucleus of Sikh worldview, which is encompassing, which is Mul Mantra. So there's no room for casteism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, those things. They don't fit here. These are illusions. These divisions, these fears, these self-protective attitudes, they are illusory. Cultivate the original self. To me, this means that process of chiseling is a lifelong cultivation to try to get to the point of being like encompassing. This doesn't mean there's only one way to be. There are multiple ways to create beauty out of chiseling something out, right? Likewise, encompassing is everything, is all-encompassing, exhibits infinite manifestations. So there's many ways, you could be perceived in many different ways by people, and all those people can be people that are walking in the path of encompassing. So I don't have to be exactly like other people. If I admire someone and I feel that they're in the path of encompassing, I don't have to try to be exactly like them, because then I'm not trying to be like encompassing, I'm trying to be like so-and-so. I have to figure out how to cultivate that original self from my own perspective and from where I stand. Perceive the grace, even when it's difficult, even when every instinct in your body is saying, oh, this is too much. Perceive the grace, because it is there. Okay. This is something that may seem, it may be something people were curious about. To others, it may seem kind of trivial. But I think talking about oneness and the way we intentionally write out oneness as the number one followed by ness can really generate a lot of important thoughts and important discussion. So I'd be happy to make this a discussion as well. Please drop any thoughts in the chat. So why do we write it like oneness versus oneness, which is a word in the English language? It's a word people use semi-regularly. It's a word that's quite prominent in discussions of spirituality. And we actually do have reasons for this. I have reasons for this. I have my Sikh viewpoint to share. So oneness, where do we see this word oftentimes in the spiritual realm? This idea that, oh, we could all live in this peaceful existence if we recognize the oneness in everyone. Now, the thing with this term is it's been a little co-opted and a little diluted, because there's this idea that, oh, it all seems to be peaceful, it's very simple, we're all just missing this obvious truth. And it's true that oneness is the ultimate truth, but it's not an obvious truth. Okay, if oneness were an obvious truth, We would not have 90% of human problems wouldn't exist. It is a very difficult truth. It is one that takes a lot of crafting to live by. So we can't just say, oh, it's simple, just recognize the oneness in all. If it were that simple, people would have done it a long time ago, and there'd be a lot less war, a lot less genocide, a lot less harm between people. The other thing is that oneness used in contemporary context is represented as this attribute. We all have this oneness in us. But oneness is not an attribute. Oneness is a structure. It is a being. It is not one single attribute. It is the culmination of all attributes. So there's not one attribute of Ikonkar. There's several that we just listed, and there's infinite more options as well. So we don't want to think of this as just some cutesy little attribute that we all share. If we all thought about it a little bit, we could all sit and hold hands in a circle. Sometimes the path to oneness is not peaceful because the societal barriers to oneness are entrenched in violence. So to dismantle violence takes a lot of bravery. You have to fight back. You can't be passive in the face of violence, or you're accepting the violence as your truth. But that is not the ultimate truth. Also, writing out the number one is just a more accurate representation of the original symbol of Ikonkar that was given to us by Guru Nanak. So it does have the number one embedded in it. So this, and that one stands in this structural way when you read oneness written out this way. And I think that's really profound, and that's important for our framing. Everything the way we say things, the way we write things, they affect the way we think, it affects the way we act. You know, if we may say, you know, Ikonkar is formless, but if we're constantly referring to the creator as he, it slowly embeds this idea in our mind that, oh, maybe actually the creator is a man. And if the creator is the ultimate being and we're thinking of the creator as a man, then maybe we start thinking men do have some inherent superiority. So that's just another example of why the way we write affects the way we read, the way we speak affects the way we think. So these are careful considerations to make when discussing the Sikh paradigm. All right, so back to some visuals, back to some metaphors. I mean, Gurbani is so richly laced with and textured by metaphors. And like I said, oneness doesn't mean that we're all the same. All of us having an inherent equality as to our divinity does not mean we're the same. So creating beauty is a way to be like the creator. Creating beauty is a way to live in the path of Ikonkar. Beauty is an example of grace that flows from the one. And beauty is not flat. It's not monotone. It's not textureless. Beauty is complex, and it requires a lot of parts that come together in intricate ways that get laid out in intentional manners. But beauty is not necessarily rational. There's things that are beautiful and we cannot describe why they're beautiful. It's not, creating beauty isn't an exact science, but science is in fact beautiful. So oneness is like a tapestry, and each of us is a different color, different textured thread that goes in that tapestry. I don't have to be like the ball of thread next to me to be integrally weaving myself in the way of Ikonkar. It's like a painting with infinite colors. It's like this is actually a painting of DNA. It's like all the little acids that make up the complex structure of DNA. We are like fish in a school, drops in an ocean, swans in a group of swans. I really forget what the proper term for that is, but that is a metaphor in Gurbani. And when we all move together, when we come together in oneness, the beauties, the capacities are endless. They're infinite. And what does it mean to come together in this way? And what does it mean to act and live in this way? So we're bringing in another really important Sikh principle that will help ground us in our engagement with Shabad. That is hukam, which simply means command, but it is the ultimate command. There's lots of little lowercase c commands in life. There's the command your parents give you, the command your boss gives you, the command your president gives you, so on and so forth. But there is an ultimate command, and it's one that's much harder to tap into. It's one that we may not be able to see if we're just going with the flow and the rhythms of man-made society. Hukam is probably the hardest principle in Sikhi to accept, because everything is a part of hukam. Death is a part of hukam. Pain is a part of hukam. Disease is a part of hukam. Everything that happens, and this is why hukam is sometimes thought of as fate or destiny, because everything that happens is hukam, and so that gets tied into the way our societies talk about fate and destiny. So horrible things that happen to us are the divine command of Ik Onkar, because there is nothing that exists beyond Ik Onkar. How do we accept that? How does the most divine being, the ultimate form, still dictate things that give us great pain? And I don't have full answers to this. Hukam is something I have to reflect on every day. So I do want to say that. The thing is that there will always be pain. That's just true. The inherent condition of being a human is painful because of how illusory and fleeting everything is. Our attachments are fleeting, but we hold on to them very dearly. We do, however, have a choice as people as to live in oneness or not. And the more we break away from the command to be like the one, the more we create consequences that are very devastating. So when I try to starve a group of, not me, but if a person were to try to starve another group of people, that is a violation of the principle of Ik Onkar. And so you may benefit from that action. Someone may benefit from that action. They might become very rich by incurring a famine, for example. But pain is felt by the sufferers. And the notion that the person in charge who's inflicting suffering is different or separate from the people suffering is an illusion. So in fact, you are harming yourself too. You may not realize it in this human form, but ultimately it's like a rubber band. The more you pull it, you pull it, you pull it, you try to separate yourself from your fellow people, the harder it snaps. The more you pull it, the harder it snaps. The consequences become greater and greater. It will come crashing down for you, and it will come crashing down for everyone, because you and everyone are one and the same. But hukam isn't just, because it's so difficult to think about pain and suffering, I think people tend to fixate on hukam in that light. But hukam is also beauty. Beauty is hukam. So whenever you create something, let's think about that act of chiseling, you know? We sit down, you organize your materials, you get inspired, you let the ideas flow through you, you become a vessel for certain emotions, and what comes out of that is something beautiful. So this shows that Hukam, for us to live in Hukam, it takes intention, it takes care, but it also takes inspiration and love. And lastly, something I like to think about when thinking about Hukam, this might help orient other people. Yes, pain and suffering is always there. Animals live in Hukam. I love animals, so it's just kind of my favorite way to think about it is that animals are always living in Hukam. If they can't find food that day, they can't find food that day. If it's a harsh, cold winter, it is a harsh, cold winter. If it's a beautiful, sunny day, it's a beautiful, sunny day. They are always in tune with the rhythm of life, with the world around them. Whereas as humans, our downfall is our ego, you know? We try to fight things that are just true, you know? We cannot live forever, and we do crazy things in this name of trying to live forever. We really hurt each other in the name of trying to make our own selves immortal. Animals, they don't do that. They have one less thing. They have many less things to worry about because they don't have ego. So, but that doesn't mean that life is easy or simple. But when we die and we decompose into the earth, we are going to come back in just a new manifestation. There are cycles to Hukam. Everything is interconnected. There's a connectedness that is so complex. It's very hard for us to grapple with, for us to interpret. And this can be it's very difficult to face. It's very difficult to face our own mortality. But the choice we have is, are we going to live in oneness? Are we going to try and create beauty and flourishing and livelihood for our collective being? Or are we going to try to live in this futile manner where we're trying to just benefit ourselves at the expense of others? So that is the choice we have. So though pain will always exist, there's a huge degree of variation that we do have control over. There is agency here. Just because everything is Hukam doesn't mean we don't have agency. We have to recognize our agency. So what are our barriers to living in Ikonkar? The 5 vikars, the 5 illnesses, so to say, which are outlined in Gurbani. Krodh, anger, calm, lust, lobh, greed, mul, emotional attachment, and ahankar, excessive pride. All 5 of these emotional states stem from ego and stem from the illusion of separation. I get angry at someone and I think it's okay to take that anger out on them because I feel like it'll make me feel good and it'll put them back in their place. But that idea that they have a place that they need to be shoved down in is an illusion. Calm, when we're lusting after very fleeting, instant gratification sorts of things. Lobh, greed, when we're thinking, okay, I'll keep all these resources for myself because I need to prioritize my people, my nation. Ahankar, excessive pride. So it's okay to you can feel good about yourself. You can feel good about those you're close to. But when you feel good in a way that's at the expense of others, that's very dangerous and a very slippery slope. So yes, these are the 5 vikars, and they all stem from home or ego. Okay, so the next session, we are finally diving into a deeper engagement with Shabad, and we're getting right into Hukam. We're getting right into the fleeting nature of our existences with a Shabad about death called Yak Araj Guptan. This is a Persian Shabad revealed by Guru Nanak Sahib. We have been told by various sources that this Shabad was possibly revealed when religious leaders asked Guru Nanak Sahib about death when he was visiting Mecca. And by deep diving into and exploring the Shabad, we can think about, what does the relationship with death tell us about our relationship with life, about how we need to live our life. So with that, I will open up for questions. Thank you for the comments in the chat. I really hope this was an enlightening, enriching session. It's the culmination of a lot of really incredible thoughts that I've been able to have the past couple of years by working with incredible Sikhs and having an amazing Sangat or congregation. And all the things that I'm telling you are things that have helped me immensely with my own life and my own chiseling process. But yes, we have some time for questions.
Thank you, Asha. Thank you for another wonderful class. We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A panel. The first one is it was actually asked before you addressed the oneness versus oneness, like written out, but perhaps we can touch upon it. So Judith asks, by writing oneness, so with the number 1 rather than oneness, and she's placed asterisks in there, are you protecting the divine? As Jews write God, so with the O, or as an asterisk, not the full word. And then actually she means protecting the sacred as opposed to protecting the divine. She read it.
I haven't thought about it that way, but I really do like bringing that idea into this. We're struggling when writing about oneness with letting this principle stand on its own and not wanting it to get kind of easily co-opted. There's also a very particular context here. I mean, as we all know, quote, Eastern religions have struggled with skewing and co-optation since the first encounters with, quote, Western thinkers. And so this was our own personal way to protect the divine. Yeah, I really do. I really would say that that's an accurate way to put it. Yeah, it's a way of making this term reminiscent of a structure and an all-encompassing worldview, rather than just this kind of, I'd say, weaker attribute, because if it's just one attribute, kind of a little bit of a weaker term. So yeah, I actually really like the way that was put. And I think that intentionality and the reason why the way Jews have their own intentionality with writing out the name of God, yeah, it's a similar type of thought process here. So thank you for that.
Lovely. So Sandeep G asks, can view no enemy be interpreted as love all? And this was Sandeep from Atlanta.
Yes, I do think it can, for sure. I think that the call to view no enemy is the call to do everything with love, and that includes the fight for justice. There are battles that can be fought with love as well. So yes, we do have to ground our sense of justice in a sense of love for all. It's not enough to just say, because there are people who view no enemy who I wouldn't say are necessarily living in that Ikonkar type mindset. because it's kind of a passive viewing of no enemy, whereas love is an action. Love is something that you have to really partake in. So yeah, I mean, I could kind of just not think one way or another about the world around me and view no enemy. But that doesn't really give the whole perspective as to what that really entails. So yeah, I do think that if you're viewing no enemy, but you're not feeling any love either, kind of have to reinvestigate whether that's actually living in a kind of divine state or not.
Mm-hmm. And the next question is from Kirandeep K. They ask, as you mentioned earlier, most things are illusionary, and thus pain itself is also an illusion in many ways, and often this can actually be part of the biggest grace, ? So I know we touched upon this a little, but perhaps if we wanted to elaborate a little.
Yeah. Pain, I mean, I think we all know this on a kind of subliminal level. It's just really hard to accept when we're actively trying to reflect on it. We get a little stubborn, but all of us have fell to grace in moments of pain. Oh yeah, okay, may have just been a comment, but I will expand on it because I do think that this is an important reminder for all of us as we live our lives. You know, after a tragedy, when people come together and they care for each other, there's such an immense feeling of grace despite something horrible having happened, you know? So pain is not separate from feeling the grace. And frankly, we wouldn't be so, it would be hard for me to feel the grace if I didn't have that experience with pain either. And I think a reality that's been uncovered by psychology as well, that kind of clues us into the relationship between pain and grace, is that we all have these like relative thresholds. So even people who have privileged lives, who have objectively fewer things to worry about, you know, stable income, maybe even a massive income, don't have to worry about where they're getting their food, have relationships with loved ones, can still be in immense pain. I mean, there's still, again, the condition of being a human is emotionally painful. Now, there are great degrees to which people can experience different types of pain. And mitigating that degree of pain, trying to build a world where that degree of pain is not so unjust and so driven by hierarchy and oppression, that's our responsibility. But even when we get to that point where we've eradicated all those ills, I mean, there is still emotional pain. But how do we sit with that pain? How do we support each other? How do we grow from it? And how do we care for one another? So yeah, I think it's really fascinating to think about these sort of relative thresholds that, you know, money can solve a lot of your problems. Oftentimes 99.9% of suffering people's problems can be solved by money. But again, it doesn't provide that perfection or that eternal feeling of peace and security, because you can solve all those man-made problems, but once you get to the emotional condition of being this illusory, fleeting being with an ego, you can still have that with all the money in the world. So people are always struggling, and there's always a process. There's always more to learn. There's always more to realize. There's always more to craft, even with resources. Now, the goal is, though, to get resources to as many people as possible, which is not the world we live in today.
Mm-hmm. So Kirandeep actually had another question, which doesn't completely relate, but it does. So they say, big question to cover here, but maybe you can touch on the relationship between hukam and free will. I know that's a grand question, so yeah, just to be mindful of time. If we want to spend like 2 to 3 minutes on it, no problem.
Yes, many people have spent their lives trying to answer this question, and I'm pretty young, but I'll give it my best shot. To me, hukam, the relationship between hukam and free will is it's that looking at, okay, I know what the boundaries and limitations of being a human are, okay? So I'm never going to be 100% happy, like have zero problems, right? Because that's just not possible for any of us. But I can live, the choice you have in Sikhi is to live as a gurmukh or a manmukh, okay? To be facing the guru or to be facing yourself, right? So that is the free will bit. I do have a choice there. Now, facing the guru doesn't mean that I'm going to be living this perfect life that everyone would want to live. It's actually a difficult path and an unpopular one oftentimes, which is why many of our gurus ended up martyred or in jail, etc. But we have a choice there. Our choice is whether we live by ego or we live by oneness. Ikonkar home. Constant battle there. But living in Ikonkar, that's not going to eradicate my personal pain, but I can do a lot to eradicate the pain of others that has come from, these unjust human structures and these human battles that we're fighting. So yeah, the choice is that orientation, and Gurbani is filled with questions of orientation. What are you oriented towards? Where are you positioning yourself? You can't break out of hukam, but you can position yourself a certain way. So for example, I had a picture of like a river with hukam in the PowerPoint. I could like fight the current or I could orient myself towards the current. I mean, it's still a wild ride to be going down a current like that, right? But it's a lot easier than trying to fight it. And the result is taking you in a particular direction with a particular orientation. So yeah, how do you orient yourself? What are your motivators in life? What is the ultimate goal there?
Lovely. Thank you for taking the time to answer all of these questions, Asha. I really appreciate it. I think it really illuminates some of the points in the session. Sure.
Sorry, one last thing. We are going to talk about emotional attachment next week a lot, so pay a lot of attention when you're reading the Shabad. There's a lot of talk of attachment to loved ones. So for those curious about the emotional attachment bit, keep an eye out for that in the reading.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, thank you everyone for all of your questions and your participation today. Please note, as always, that a recording of this live session will be available within 24 hours. Please tune in next week for the 7th week of this live course. Please tune in for our next live webinar, which will be this Sunday, July 5th, The Art of Gathering, Reimagining Sangat, a conversation for young Sikhs in the diaspora. How do we find, connect, and build our Sangat? How is our understanding of belonging challenged and changing over time? Join us as we discuss ways to create compassionate communities in the age of isolation. And lastly, don't forget to tune into the Sikhcast, a podcast produced by Sikhri, where we explore the various issues and events affecting Sikhs worldwide. Thank you for joining in. Today's live class will be ending now. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.